right, welcome. Getting another chance to record. Coach Lane, I feel like we have like people just lined up right now to do recordings with as we've kind of reached out to people. But I think today is the best guest we've ever had.
We have the goat today.
I promised a legend on Facebook and on Instagram, and we are bringing you a legend today. We have the one and only Ralphene Lee with us today. So we are really, really excited. It's just exciting. I love this because it's keeping us in touch with what we do as coaches and having these conversations and reaching out some new people and some people we already know. So, but we've been talking about this one for a little while, and I'm really excited. And I think you guys are going to enjoy this. I know I'm going to enjoy it, having this conversation. Coach Lane, would you like to say a hello to everyone?
What's up? Thank you, Ralphene, so much for being here. It's a pleasure. It's an honor. We were just chatting away with Ralphene even before we started recording. We're like, oh, we got to actually start recording this.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
This is awesome. This is awesome. Miss the wrestlers, miss everybody. Greg Willie just put out a really cool slideshow. I posted it on the Bella Vista Wrestling fan page this morning. He spent a lot of time putting that together. And he got all the photos from Doc Martin, who spent a ton of time editing and getting those photos together to Greg. So thank you to you guys. As of now, we're still looking like we can start some preseason stuff in December, with the season starting in February and practice and competition in March. So we are on schedule for that. So make sure you are lifting like you're supposed to be right now. So if not, it's not too late. Let's go.
By preseason, you mean running hills and stairs and all that kind of fun stuff,
so
right?
Fun, though.
It's just a nice way to say it. It's preseason.
Just watch the slideshow video today, and it will motivate you. It got me really excited. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, I like miss wrestling. Like, I miss these guys. I miss the parents. I miss everybody. Right? I miss that whole environment. And that video today just really got me excited and like got this like nostalgia. You know, like just felt a little sad at the same time, but.
Yeah, you know, it's definitely a hole there in, you know, not the season should be coming up right now. We should be like really mentally getting prepared and getting all our ducks in a row and ready to go. And it's just, I'm realizing the closer we get to how big that hole really is and how much that fills in what we do and contributions we get to make as coaches and relationships with not just our wrestlers, but parents and their community. And, but we'll get there. We'll get back there. I'm excited, and it's kind of a light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing, I guess, right now. You know, we know that that's sitting there waiting, and we'll get back and see those kids again and parents in the community. And in the meantime, we get to see Ralphene.
Yep.
That's even better. That's even better.
Yep.
All right. Are you ready for the the questions?
I think it's not fair that I didn't get the questions ahead of time.
Hey, I talked to the commission on debates, and they said that wasn't allowed. So otherwise,
wait a minute. Commission.
Yeah, it's just Garrett and I. It's
yeah.
All right. So the parents and the wrestlers in our programs and the millions of fans who listen to this podcast, millions. Know quite a bit about your history and your contributions to Bella Vista Wrestling, and not just BV Wrestling, actually globally into wrestling. But what I think most of them don't know, and I know because I'm a long tenured San Juan teacher, is your background as a teacher in San Juan. Your work and your reputation is incredible. So give us a little bit of background in your teaching and some of the things that you accomplished as a teacher.
Gosh, Dana, here I was all set to answer wrestling questions.
I know.
I
wrote that one all myself.
You surprised me. Well, I taught over 30 years, 30 something. I'm not sure exactly how many. Most of my years were at Trajan School, which feeds to Carnegie and BV with some of the kids anyway. And I was very fortunate to be at Trajan when I was, because at that time, Trajan was a brand new school in our district. And so we wrote the vision, the mission statement, and all that stuff from the ground up, which is really an experience if you've never done it before. I didn't really come on board till the second year, but my good friend Lynn Pistakini was there the first, and I went along with her and learned a lot in doing that. And then when we started out, first of all, we were a demonstration school, which I didn't really know what I was getting into, but I was really lucky because what happened was we actually had staff development housed right at the Trajan campus. And the staff development unit they taught us so much stuff. And being a demonstration school, it literally means that people might walk into your classroom at any hour and see what's going on. Wow. Usually we had groups planned, we knew when they were coming, but not always. And we had people from Japan and people from, lots of different places. So it was an exciting place to be teaching at that time.
Super cool. I did not know.
You just gave me a little mini flashback. When I first started teaching, I used to sub quite a bit for Kathy Poloni over there.
You did?
I did, yeah. I got to sub. Yeah, I got to sub a few times for her, and I was just working one day, and all of a sudden this group of people came walking in the room. It's like, oh no, I'm just a sub, But yeah, I just remember that school just being really incredible, and actually, the secretary there is really a big reason why I ended up at Carnegie the way I did. I'm not sure of the name, but I was supposed to be there for Kathy for like a week. And Carnegie called and I said, well, I've already committed to being here. And I get a handwritten note in the middle of the day from the secretary saying, you need to see me before you leave. And it's like, oh no, what did I do? And she said, you need to call Carnegie back and take that spot, because I didn't know that spot was planned for me to be there the rest of the year. But the way it was back then, they would, make sure those things happened. But,
yes, they did, didn't they? Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just really impressed with, I know they had the pod in the back where they started like the sixth graders rotating through subjects. So they're really getting them ready for middle school. And I just remember there being some incredible teachers at that school at that time.
And something that I felt was so fortunate to be included in, we were chosen to be the first full inclusion school in San Juan District.
Yeah.
And we were chosen because we had the campus, but more than that, we were already integrating all of our kids as much as we possibly could in the regular classroom. So we were all nervous about that, thinking, oh my gosh, what are we going to do with these kids? And so they had a few workshops and we go, hey, this is just what we're doing anyway. These kids so we rewrote curriculum. It was a wonderful experience for everybody concerned.
Yeah, and those kids ended up at Carnegie.
Yes, they did.
That group of kids ended up at Carnegie, yeah. And it really, obviously we were really nervous about it, but we kind of took it and ran with it. And I, for years, from that group all the way through probably until 5 years ago, I was the 8th grade history class that would take those kids in. I had ILS kids in my room.
Yeah.
Diane Coster and I did a lot of training for co-teaching within the district, and we did some workshops at CLMS, but it was great. I mean, it just changed the whole atmosphere of your classroom with your kids. It's amazing the way it changes things and what that did for our school.
Yeah.
One thing I learned early on with in the teaching credential program and in my career was making those accommodations and specially designed academic instruction. You know what I mean? That's good teaching in general.
All about you teach every kid at their level if you can.
Yeah, and good teaching is good teaching, right? So like if I'm making these special accommodations, whatever, like, and I'm explaining this in a very like detailed way, that's just good teaching in general. Like a lot of everybody can benefit from that, not just like one or two groups of kids, So that's great. Hey, Ralphene, back to your teaching stuff. Can you tell us about some of your awards and accomplishments? I know you're very humble and you don't want to brag, but this is, it's not about you, it's about everybody. So something about Teacher of the Year or something like that, or?
Yeah, I can, because I was, it's just kind of like sometimes you're in the right place at the right time. And I think that's kind of what happened to me, because I was nominated by my staff and then by my principal for the county to go forth to the county competition. And then I found out I had to like write a master's thesis to go farther. And I didn't really know if I wanted to do that or not, but I thought, why not? And I did, and ended up being selected as one of a group of students. And the process is really good, because say you narrow it down by reading paperwork, you narrow it down, say, to 13 teachers from all over the state. I mean, you go from Reading down to, it doesn't matter where they're from, doesn't matter. If two of the best teachers are teaching side by side, they look at them that way. And it was really a learning experience for me. So the team of two came to visit my classroom. And fortunately, my kids were really good that day. Of course, I threatened them with death.
Yeah.
It's amazing how they come through in those moments.
Don't they?
do.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. So I happen to be, and something people don't realize is because California is such a large state, we are allowed to have 5 teachers of the year, state teachers of the year.
Oh,
And still, it's not proportional to what the small states are, So that's very fortunate. So anyway, I was chosen as one of the 5 in 1997, which wow, I learned so much. I mean, you know how that goes. You always learn, and I love being a lifelong learner, but I certainly learned a lot from that experience. And I'm real happy to say that today I'm still involved with that because I'm on the committee that reads the resumes for the nominees every year. And, just like the wrestling family is a family, that Teacher of the Year family is kind of another little family unit I'm a part of. And what I was going to say, those 13 people that are nominated all over the state, you are going to have the same team look at every classroom. So it's not Dave looking at some, so you can imagine it takes 2 weeks to put that all together.
wow.
So anyway, yeah, it's quite a process. And I was, really honored.
That's awesome. And that's so cool that you're part of that team now that Ray does.
Yeah, I love it. We play Words with Friends. We, just all.
Yeah.
I will say last year, one of my favorite moments of the 2019-2020 season was when you were the honorary coach for Bella Vista for those couple of days. And a lot of people don't know this, but Ralphene was the honorary coach for us this year at one of our dual meets and sat in the corner and helped coach the kids. But the day before that dual meet, she came to our practice and gave a speech to our wrestling team. And I was so impressed with your speech was fantastic. It was awesome. And you had those kids, you could hear a pin drop. They were dead. They were so engaged with what you were saying. And it was so impressive. And immediately afterwards, Toby Harris, the other coach with me, he came up to me. He's like, you can tell she is a good teacher, legit California Teacher of the Year. She is really good. Right. And it was, those kids just, they got a whole nother level of respect for you. And it was really impressive. It was cool to see you in that environment and to have you involved with that whole entire process.
Well, here's what I have to tell you about that, Garrett. I have been very fortunate, to be in the Hall of Fame, the State Hall of Fame and the National Hall of Fame with Charlie, but nothing has been an honor like being there, talking to your kids, sitting in that corner. That's probably the proudest moment of my life. And I mean that sincerely. Meant a lot.
Yeah.
My
And Garrett, I think that all goes, you touched it right there too. And that's why it is such an honor to place you in that idea that coaching is teaching. It's the same process. It's just a different classroom and a different format that we're doing it with, but coaching is teaching. And that's the one different thing about coaching wrestling than teaching, when you do get to sit in that corner, right? With those kids under that spotlight, because when our kids take a test and they're doing great, that's not quite what we're doing. We're not, they don't have a spotlight on them. They may feel like they do, but
come on, choose A.
Right. And being able to watch kids just shine in front of people it's amazing. And that was a great night. It was such a cool thing.
And that's, the kids still say, do your best. Because I remember you
Did
said,
they really? That's awesome.
They still say, do your best.
Oh,
and it actually goes right into my next question, because as a parent of, and the wife of such a family that was, and you so strong academically and athletically in your careers, David and Susie, I mean, so much success in everything they've done in school and athletics. Dave went from Stanford to Wisconsin after Bella Vista. And where did Susie go to college?
Stanford.
That's what I thought. I didn't want to say it wrong.
Yeah, David graduated from Stanford. He came back and graduated from Stanford. So
okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks to Dave Schultz.
Perfect. That's awesome. So, what did you and Charlie do as parents because it's so hard to be a successful student. It's so hard to be a successful athlete, and to combine that marriage of those two things together and be successful in both of those endeavors in life. And for your children, right? What did you guys do as parents to guide your children, and what advice could you give parents now for the parents listening on what did you guys do that worked out so well that you just grew these just
Boy,
awesome human being.
you know, that's such a hard question to answer. And I listen to parents of back in the day when we were young parents together or something, and I would hear what they were telling their kids, and I thought, oh man, I should have been doing that with my kid, you know, but you just live your life one day at a time. If you're lucky enough to come from a good home, as both Charlie and I did, of course, that makes a huge difference. It really does, but that's not the only thing. But I think the most important thing is that you model what you want your kids to do. That's the key. I mean, you don't swear at home if you don't want your kids to swear, you know, and if you want your kids to read a book, you better be reading books at home. So modeling it is a lot of it. And, you know, David with his athletics and stuff, I think too, there's a fine line, especially in athletic competition. And you guys manage this skill so well, I would say, listening to what you do in the wrestling room with your kids and your vision statements and all that stuff is not to put pressure on the kids. And if there is pressure, it has to come from within the athlete, you know.
Yeah.
And I know David could have been and was, of course, under a lot of pressure to go for that third state championship, but never ever was it discussed in our home. You know, it was just, oh, well, it's another match. And, you know, so I think not pressuring kids. And then that's a fine line, because then you don't want to baby them too much either. So
Yeah.
it's so hard. You know, when I was a parent, I didn't consider it a hard thing to do. And now I'm seeing, especially my one granddaughter has little kids, and I'm thinking, oh man, it is so hard. And Garrett, I look at you with your little girls and I think, oh man, it wasn't that hard when I was, and really it is different now. Things have changed a lot.
Sure.
Too.
Oh, there's
You know,
a million different things.
And Ralphene, you're talking a little bit about motivation, and
Yeah.
that was one of the things that I always was amazed with Charlie is he knew what buttons to push and when it was time to flip a switch and when it wasn't. And he knew athletes as individuals and knew what they needed. Some needed a kick in the rear and some didn't. Some just needed you to let them figure it out. And I think that goes the same thing of being a parent. Every kid's different, and it's about figuring out where the buttons are.
Yeah.
And what you touched on too, it's I've seen like a lot of the top coaches that I've studied, they do a lot of those things. You're saying take it one day at a time. So you're focusing on your process. You're focusing on right now, just doing what you can do right now.
Way down the road.
Yeah, you're not only teaching the stuff, but you're modeling it as well, right? So we do that as coaches, as teachers, as parents, but like modeling, I practice what I preach, right? And then and the other thing I love is I got this from John Wooden in one of his books that he wrote, but he said he never talked about championships ever. He never even talked about winning, right? And obviously you want to win, and he's the most successful basketball coach of all time, right? But he said he wouldn't talk about winning or championships, but he just focused on each day, improving each day, focusing on the process. And he kind of said his goal was to be able to sit in the stands and watch the game and not even have to say a single word while the players played, right? But like what you just said is like what you guys did as parents. I mean, you're like taking it one day at a time, right? Not putting pressure on them, because if you guys sat at the dinner table all week before the state championship and said, David, you better win this one. You got to focus on it. Think about state, right? Then you're getting in his head.
You got to go out and run tonight. You know, never once did Charlie say you got to go out. David just on his own, he'd go run or he'd work out or whatever.
And if he needed that, you guys probably would have figured out that that's what he needed, because some kids want that from their parents.
Right, you're right. And again, like Dana said, it just depends on the individual kid and how you, in the classroom, how you motivate them, in the wrestling room. And I think what you just said, Garrett, when I was so glad that I got to be there to watch practice the day before the meet, because I could see what you were working on. And I don't have a lot of background in technique and fundamentals like you guys do. I just know kind of the whole big picture.
Sure.
But that night in the meet, I would see certain kids and it's almost like they were thinking, oh yeah, I can do this. And you and I talked about that. We'd see several kids.
Yeah, look at them trying that,
the things that you had taught the day before. And that's what a good teacher does. Yeah.
Yeah, and we had a whole thing about like, hey, I want you to try this and fail at it. It's okay to fail.
Right.
And then you know what, we'll try again, and maybe we'll fail again, we'll fail better, right? But we'll just keep on trying it. So go out there and try, make mistakes. It's okay. Have fun.
Garrett, that was That was one of my favorite moments of your Bella Vista season was the first duel when you had them all together and said, let's go out there and make some mistakes. And just the look on their face, first of all, their eyes got about this big, like, what are you talking about? But then they got it. It was like, you know what, go out there, try the things that we've been working on. If you make a mistake, you make a mistake. But I'd rather have you, make a mistake trying something than lose because you were afraid to lose.
And isn't it what we want to teach these kids, like these lifelong skills, right? And in the classroom or in athletics, like go out there and try things in your life. And if you fail, you make a mistake or let's go back and regroup, practice, get better at whatever that is that we're trying to get better at, and try it again, right? Have some resilience, right?
What this ties in with, and I bet you guys have both read the book called Mindset.
Yeah.
I can't say the author right now. She's a Stanford lady. Carol Dweck.
Right, yeah.
Growth mindset versus fixed mindset.
Oh, important. Yes.
Yeah.
And in that book, she talked about great athletes that could have been even greater had they not stuck with that fixed mindset, and you think a great athlete would have to be, but that is kind of part of all of this too.
Scronco podcast, what, Diana, number 3 or number 2? We did a growth mindset versus fixed mindset.
I remember. I listened to it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Carol Dweck is phenomenal. She's awesome.
She is.
I do that. I bring her in my classroom too. Every year we did a whole thing with her. She's awesome.
Yeah.
Dana,
all right.
I think your turn.
I'm ready. Both Garrett and I had the honor of being at your induction ceremony for the Hall of Fame. I just thought I look back at that picture of that whole group of people that were there, and it's an amazing, it's like a timeline of Bella Vista wrestling. It really is, because, I have an older brother that was, there in the 70s and played for Charlie and wrestled for Charlie. And I know a lot of those guys from then. And then the group I went to school with and David went to school with, and, the youngins, like the Garrett age kind of guys.
Jake Briggs.
Yeah, Jake Briggs. But your impact is so much more than Bella Vista wrestling and what you've done and your family has done. I just loved if you have a story or two that you wanted to share from, because we talked before we got on air about the Bella Vista Spring Classic. So you've done that all the way to, Olympic level work in wrestling. So do you have a story or two that you want to get out there for us?
Well, okay. And if you've read Charlie's book, you've probably heard some of these stories.
A couple times.
Yeah. But one that I will never forget, because I would carry that into my classroom. You guys know the name Rulon Gardner. Now, our audience may not, but a lot of them will. Rulon Gardner was our Olympic champion who beat the Russian, can't think of his name right now, Garrett, who'd never been beat before. Well, I always worked the Concord International Wrestling Tournament, which was held down Bill Martell's place down there at Concord. And this particular year, the Olympic championship, not the championships, the tryouts were being held. So I was the head official. So I'm sitting there at a table and it's time for weigh-ins, and weigh-ins were to close at 6 p.m. that night. So I'm sitting at the desk and I'm kind of getting stuff together because it's time to end the weigh-ins. I'm watching the clock and I hear somebody yelling down the hall, come on, come on. And I'm thinking, oh boy. And so I'm watching the clock and the hand showing it's 6 o'clock. That's easy when you've got one of those clocks that does that. And here comes the coach, and the coach says, oh, my wrestler needs to weigh in. I said, I got to tell you this, coach. Well, right now, I would say it's maybe 13 seconds past 6 o'clock. No big deal, but that's a technicality, and I have to note that on the card. He said, well, it really doesn't matter because my wrestler's a heavyweight anyway. I said, yeah, it does matter. So anyway, of course, Rulon went back, and he was a college student at that time, fortunately. And so he stepped on the scales, and they marked down that he was there at 13 seconds after 6 or whatever the seconds were. So you know what happens next? A big international, protest committee meets on this. Well, you see both sides of it, of course, because some of the coaches were saying, oh, come on, 13 seconds, of course it's okay. And other guys are saying, well, what about 2 minutes? Would that be okay? Well, and it went back. But the interesting thing was, it was the different countries, and then you've got these interpreters doing that Concord tournament. Oh my goodness. I could tell you a lot of stories. But anyway, they finally did come to the conclusion that the kid would be disqualified because he technically did not make weigh-ins. I happen to agree with that decision too, because, now he was a college student. He probably wouldn't have placed anyway. But you see what I'm saying? Because if that had happened 8 years later, we wouldn't have had the Olympic champion there.
Oh.
And I'm sure he never forgot that.
He never missed. He never made it late to weigh-ins ever again.
I bet he never was late to anything.
Yeah.
And I would always I would tell my third graders that story, about how important it is to be on time. So that's one that I always remember.
I love that one. That reminds me, and I know we could go on forever, but that reminds me of the John Smith one where in Barcelona, where back then, Dana, in '92, they had it's like a point system, and then the final 3 people would get to a round robin.
Right.
And then those point system, they could carry or not. And John Smith lost a match, right, early on. And he ran to Ralphene while he was wrestling, right?
Yeah, Greg Strobel came to me. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Tell us real quick. Or not real quick, just take your time.
I'm sorry. Going at the Olympics, and I'm the official sent to the Olympics, so I think I'll be working in the pairing room. That's what you do, right? I mean, that was what the United States thought I would be doing. That's what I thought I would be doing. Wrong. The Spanish people had only their people in the pairing room. I was not even allowed to go in and walk around and look over their shoulders or anything. That was really, and so what am I really there for? I'm really there for our coaches, So now it turns out that I've got 3 mats going, all the weights are going, and I have to figure out who loses, who wins, and who wrestles who next. You coaches always used to think we had a crystal ball that we looked in to see. So they'd say, well, if so-and-so loses and so-and-so wins, in 2 matches, who does my guy wrestle? And I'm supposed to know the answer to that, right?
Right.
So like you said, John Smith had lost a match, and he was wrestling the Cuban, and the Cuban was, I forget exactly how it went. And we thought that this is the one that John loses. They wanted to know if he could lose this match and still go on, because the other guy had lost. So Greg comes running up to me and he says, Ralphene, can Don lose this match? And first of all, this match is going to be part of determining that, as is this match. And I thought, oh my gosh. Pressure thing. So I thought it should go that way. And I said, I think so, Greg. And he goes, you can't say I think so. You got to. I said, okay, yes, he can lose the match. I thought, oh my, I better be swimming back home.
And just so everybody knows, Ralphene was right, and John Smith went on to win his 2nd gold medal.
And won the gold medal. Yes,
all
he
thanks
did.
to you.
Yeah, right.
That is awesome. That's a good one.
That's a classic.
Well, you've met so many coaches and leaders and just so many people through all your travels throughout all your life and wrestling and education. Besides Charlie, who was your favorite coach that you ever met? And you don't have to say like me, just because you feel bad for me or something like that.
We know we're in the top 3 at least, so you can go from there. From 4 on, you're.
Yes.
If you say Mike Lee, we know you're lying.
Yeah.
So, I'm just kidding. Who's out of all the levels, out of everybody, who's the favorite coach that?
That's such a hard question. I mean, wow. And again, I could tell you so many stories about, when David was being recruited, the guys that sat in our living room and the coaches that flew into the airport just to sit down with Dave Lee and try to get him to change his mind once he's decided on Stanford. He'd say, I'll listen to you. And he'd say no. And so what's his name gets on his plane and flies back to Oklahoma. I can't think of his name right now. But a couple people I admire. Well, who wouldn't admire Cale Sanderson?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't even know the guy, but I know what a force he's got to be, and I don't know what his secret is. But I know he gets good material, but he's got to be a heck of a coach for whatever.
Oh, phenomenal.
Yeah. And another coach that I really admire, and this is a football coach, and this is Kirk Ferentz at Iowa, the football coach. And if you guys in the audience follow football at all, there was a problem with Iowa football in the beginning of it, actually in the spring and summer, because some of the black athletes were saying that they hadn't been treated fairly. That broke my heart because that was my school, Charlie's school. Anyway, they've taken care of that if you ever can, and I think the school will come out stronger because of that. But I do admire Kirk Ferentz for one reason. I sent Charlie's book to help me out, the wrestling coach, Bonds. Tom Brands. Yeah, I sent him a bunch. I sent him a bunch of books. That's my. I should have put my sign up. And I said, would you give some to Coach Ferentz? And he did, and I got a handwritten note back from Kirk Ferentz. I mean, like this, handwritten, saying, thank you for the book. It's really wonderful. And I will say Tom Brands did the same thing. Tom Brands sent me an email, and he said, oh my gosh, I did not know that Dave Lee's dad played football at Iowa.
That's cool.
And those are awesome connections that make you realize what those coaches are. So
that is awesome. So along with that, based on everything that you've seen from both your kids, your husband, all the coaches you've been around, what do you think makes up a good coach? I mean, that's in general, the definition of good. A phenomenal and exceptional coach, right? Something like that. What are the qualities? What have you seen throughout your life and your career and through everything? What are the best coaches? What are they doing?
I think teachers, coaches, the same thing. Of course, we know you have to have a love for kids, although some teachers don't, but we know that is part of it. You have to be a lifelong learner.
Yes.
You can't, I did it this way last year, I'm going to do it this way the next 10 years. You can't be that way. But I'm going to turn this one around, because two of the coaches that I have been most impressed with is you two guys. And you both got your masters from Missouri, you and Mike. You guys, you had the season going on, you had so you tell me, what your secret is, because you guys, I can't tell you how impressed I was with you guys doing that.
Ralphene, I've said this before on when I was asked about, thank you, first of all. When I was on this podcast called the Character Combine podcast, and they asked about coaching and who you're influenced by. And I always consider myself incredibly lucky to have gone through Bella Vista when I did. That group of men at that school and the way they coached, and it was about getting kids involved in something positive. I remember right before wrestling season started, Gordon Pistakini was outside the gym, and he said, you're coming out for basketball. And I go, no, I'm not a basketball player. I'm going to wrestle. And he goes, okay, but you have to do something. It doesn't have to be basketball, but you have to do something. So it wasn't about his team, and it was about kids doing something positive, right?
Yep.
Right. And playing football for Charlie and playing football for Don Driscoll, and all those guys, it was that same attitude. Like, we're going to be role models. We're going to be a positive influence on kids. We're about this high school. And that was such a powerful thing for that high school. And it was why they were good in everything. Baseball, football, track and field, Larry Fletcher, known that guy since I was a kid, and they're just great human beings. Right.
I just happened to look at the back of Charlie's book here, and I'm just going to read you a short quote. It says, I think Coach Lee was more in the business of creating character and molding young men into responsible people than in creating state and nationally ranked competitors. And that's a quote by Cody Olson. I think that says it all. That's what you guys do on a daily basis,
That's where I was going to go with mine is, one, I truly do care and love for every single one of my wrestlers and every single one of my students. I care about individually. I get to know them individually, personally, outside of sport.
Yes.
Because I care about them as a person and
their families. Yeah.
And their families and everything, right? And their overall well-being. And how can I be a positive role model for them? And being a coach, a wrestling coach, gives us the opportunity to use wrestling as a tool, right? To build those lifelong
traits,
those lifelong positive skills. And when you focus on that, and that you're there for, it's not about me, it's for the kids, right? And then it starts getting you never see us yell at the kids or curse or do anything get angry or anything like that at the kids. It's because we have that vision, that mindset that we are there for them, for their overall well-being, right? And it's not about me. So that's why I'm not sitting there yelling. I'm not like, you're making me look bad, right? Or anything like that.
Right.
It's like,
we can do that on our own.
oh my gosh. But just using sport, wrestling as a tool to do that, build the social and emotional character of these young men and women, right? And giving them those lifelong skills that they can carry with them. And I am a product of some great coaches and some horrible coaches. And I learn what to do and what not to do. Then I'm a lifelong learner as well, like you said, always trying to learn, like to grow professional development stuff and teaching and coaching, but always improving my skill set from mindset stuff to technique to caring about the athletes individually. And I think if you do all those things and you do care about them and you go out of your way to help them and mold them, and like being on campus helps so much. Like I'll go walk around at lunch and just hang out with the kids, and I don't even talk wrestling. I just like hang out with them.
Just being one of the guys. Yeah,
just to hang out. And you do all those things and you do care about them and you're consistent and you model those.
You and I both know one of the big reasons you're successful is this guy right here, Dana, and everything he does down below. Oh my God.
Dana is the cornerstone of this whole.
Yeah, I agree.
But, you know, we everybody that's involved with it we all have our roles to play, you know, and that's what I love about it. We're not just here at Carnegie wrestling and doing our own thing. It's about a whole process that goes from our youth program and the people that Mike recruited to be coaches in that program, and then at our level, and we're all on the same page. We're all trying to do the same thing. And like at the end, being there with the BV kids at those tournaments is great.
And Mike Lee did such a beautiful, amazing job just rebuilding the program up and doing all those things. And I'm really just trying to, I'm doing a few things my way, but like, you know, I don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? I don't need to fix something that's not broke, right? Like with that culture he created, that positive.
If he hadn't come in when he did, BV wrestling would have been, well, we know.
Yeah, and that positive coaching that he created and molded. And when you do all these things, Ralphene, and I could go on forever, everything me and Dana are doing and Mike did, but the winning takes care of itself, right?
It does.
We don't sit there and preach, win at all costs at all, ever, right? That's the opposite of what we do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We're task-oriented. But the winning takes care of itself when you focus on just molding good people and getting them to buy in and commit and trust you. You trust all those things, right? You trust them. So, but yeah, that culture, it's that culture. And even Matt Vigna, who is so awesome with the Young Kids Club. Sean Scully has been helping a lot with the younger kids club. And Matt Vigna just sent me a text last week. He's like, hey, like, I want to help more than ever this year. Like, what can I do to tell me? And, so I mean, just so lucky to have people like that, because that type of stuff saves my marriage. You know what I mean? Which keeps me going. You know, because if I had to run the kids club by myself too, then I just probably wouldn't be able to coach, right? Because family's first for me. So, but anyway,
the whole thing's a huge job.
Along with this, I want to say something about like the Bella Vista Fan Club page. I looked and we've got like 300 people that are, what do you call it, part of that or something.
You like that,
following.
Yeah, and I was so afraid that with the, you know, once wrestling stopped, it's always a dry season, but there's something. But then when COVID hit, I thought, oh man, this is going to be the end of it. But you know, every once in a while, you'll find some little thing to put on there. Everybody's watching for something. So there's the fan base too, and they're used to what you guys are doing for them, and they're loyal fans, aren't they? Gee.
Yeah, and you know what, Ralphene, that's why we wanted to keep the podcast thing going, because really when we originally started doing it, was about getting the message of what we're doing in the program.
Right.
But we still have a message, right? Yeah. Even though we're down, we still have this message of positive coaching and what our program's about, and being able to bring in some people from across the country to talk about what they've done, and to be able to bring you in and talk. And I think it's a great way to kind of keep everybody connected on the message and what we're doing, and keep that going. And there are ways to do it. We just got to figure it out, you know. Just have to figure it out.
Yep, we do.
All right. You actually mentioned this gentleman earlier. I know Dave Schultz is, he's a big part of your family and what you do. He's also considered one of the best wrestlers ever, and a great coach as well. So just tell us a little bit about your family's relationship with Dave. I know he's got a connection with you, and I know with David, definitely, he was a big part of Dave's life, and just whatever you're comfortable talking about Dave Schultz and your family's relationship.
Well, Dave was such a unique guy. And, I think I realized that when I first met him. And I think the first time I really knew who he was, well, I knew who he was when, didn't Glenn Cooper beat him when he was a junior in high school?
Glenn Cooper, a Carnegie kid, by the way.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
and so Dave was second, second, somebody beat him. But then the next year when he qualified for Tbilisi, remember that?
Yep.
And then
that's cool.
What he didn't win that.
I think he won the Tbilisi tournament in Russia.
He did, as
high school.
a senior in high school. Yes.
Considered like the toughest tournament in the world.
So that was in February. Now he's coming back, and it's time for him to wrestle in the California State Championships. Well, you guys know well enough to know that there are coaches out there who say, well, he can't do that. He wasn't here for subsections. He missed sections. We can't let him wrestle. Well, you guys know who led the charge on that one and said, wait a minute, this is a rule we're going to break because Dave's going to wrestle. And of course he did. But that was establishing right at that time. Went into Tbilisi as a high school kid.
Wow.
Jeez. So, Charlie knew Dave fairly well, and he would have him come up and do clinics. And Dave would, he'd sit down and eat dinner with us and everything. And I had him drive. One time when he was up, he spoke to my third grade class, as did Mark. Mark made a separate trip up and did a clinic and spoke to my third grade class. We were standing out on the playground, and my kids were out there. Dave and I were talking, and we were just talking about stuff in general. And he said, he said, I didn't do too well in kindergarten. I said, is that right? He said, yeah. He said, all these little kids, they were whining around. They wanted to paint on these easels. And he grew up in a culture there at Stanford because his dad was a Stanford professor, and his mom was a big wheel in the Renaissance thing up at Medford. Anyway, they were both very intellectual. And he grew up with adults and in an adult culture. So kindergartners to him, he didn't want anything to do with it. And so he didn't really fit into school, during that time. It just wasn't his thing. And you all know kids like that now. We've got lots of kids, more and more kids, which we're starting to recognize now. But he was telling me that story, which was a good one. And of course, he brought his gold medal, and he let all my kids put on the gold medal, and wear it, and told them a little bit about it. And then he said he would write us a letter. So all my kids, it's hard to get third graders motivated to write. But when they wrote to Dave Schultz, and I said, think of one question this is after he visited us, and something that he didn't answer. Think of one question you'd like to ask him. So we had 32 kids at the time, so we got 32 letters. So he wrote back to us. He answered every kid's question individually.
Wow.
Now, I did happen to find out from Nancy later on that she may have played a major part there, but nevertheless.
That's a lot of questions.
That's a lot of questions. Like, what's your favorite animal,
Right.
That's awesome.
My mental picture right now of those two guys standing up in front of a bunch of third graders is awesome.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh.
I just looked it up, by the way. He got second at the Tbilisi in high school.
A Russian beat him up.
Yeah, and he plays higher than any other American at the tournament. But then
other American at the tournament.
Yeah.
Wow. Because there were some good guys wrestling.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and he went to Palo Alto, right? High school.
His coach was Joe DeMeo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Cool.
So when David, you can take 5 trips to visit different colleges when you're recruited. And David did his trips to Oklahoma, Okie State. Did he go to Nebraska? Yeah, because he and Cody went to Nebraska together. He did go to Iowa and maybe Arizona, can't remember. But anyway, he visited, and he kind of was leaning towards Oklahoma. Well, Susie was at Stanford at the time. She was a junior then. And she said, David, at least come down and spend the weekend with me. And he goes, Susan, I don't want to go to school there. And she goes, well, just come down and see the campus. I mean, you guys know, if you're on that campus, you fall in love with it.
Oh, it's gorgeous. Yeah.
So he goes down, of course, where he ends up. He works out in the wrestling room with Mark and Dave for like 5 hours the first day.
Wow.
Yeah. So he calls Charlie that night because he's supposed to come home the next day because this was a Saturday. And he goes, "Hey, Dad, can I stay one more day?" He said, "I'm working out with Mark and Dave Schultz." And Charlie goes, "Well, okay." So the next day, I don't know how many hours they worked out, but you know how that would go. You just couldn't get enough. So he calls that night and he says to Charlie, he says, "It won't hurt if I miss school on Monday." And Charlie says, "Get yourself home. It's time." It was enough. But that 2 days did it. I mean,
Wow.
and when David did go there, I think he had worked out with Dave Schultz something like 12 weeks before it ever took him down once.
Wow. Yeah. That's awesome.
His level. Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
Another cool thing is that Pete Hendrick, another coach in our program,
Yeah.
his high school wrestling coach was Mark Schultz.
I know it.
Another just small world.
I didn't know that.
Small world correlation. So I have one last question left, Ralphene, but before I ask the question, I just want to give you the floor. If there's anything you want to share or say or discuss, or just you kind of like have an open opportunity. And by the way, this is so much fun that I want to do this again.
Awesome.
Okay.
I maybe I have somebody else in my family that might even, talk to us sometime too.
That would be a good one too.
You know a guy.
Yeah.
And he is supposed to be on his surfboard right about now, but he didn't get to go to Bali. He goes to Bali for 6 months every year.
Yeah.
He gets to go this year. And no, I'm not going to mention. I've got too much to say. Okay, if I said anything that I left out, you always think of things. But the first thing I would want to say to the audience out there, and I'm speaking about the athletes and the families, I want to impress upon them again how very fortunate they are to be at Bella Vista and at Carnegie with the coaching staffs that they have. Because, I mean, you guys don't forget to send me my check after this,
Yeah. Yeah.
But really, I'm so sincere about that, and it shows. And just the comments you hear as a spectator when they're talking about little things that happen, and that's always nice to hear. So I have to say that, and I have to also say that the sport of wrestling is so unique. I remember Mark Sprague is a great coach in Oregon, and I think he's 85 now, and he's still coaching. And the Oregon USA and the Superstars were hand in hand, and we trained up there and they trained down here. And one time, and this was fairly early on in my wrestling career, we were walking in together, big, important tournament, not many spectators there. And I didn't say much about it, but he looked at me and he said, it just takes a special kind of person to appreciate our sport. Yeah. Isn't that the truth?
It is true. Yeah.
Look at our families. Yeah. Look at our families.
Gosh.
The whole family comes every weekend. It's a unique sport. And the traits that wrestling teaches, I can't think of another sport that does it better.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely agreed.
Yeah. It's so hard to try and communicate that. What's so special about our sport to people who are not involved in our sport.
Exactly.
Even some of my friends who aren't involved with wrestling and they see what I do, they just don't get it. They don't see it because they're just not in it, right? And it's so hard to communicate. It's like, to me, it's like trying to tell a dog what day of the week it is. You know what I mean? It's like, I can't, I just can't. And, like, they don't get like why I'm meeting at Bella Vista at 5 a.m. on a Saturday morning. And
then coming home at 12 o'clock at midnight.
Yeah, sitting in a high school gym after driving and then all day long. And then all the parents and all the families are there with me. I'm like, how the heck? Like, what is going on here? Why are you guys doing that? Like, I don't know. I don't have those words. I'm not like a poet, I'm not a writer or anything, So, yeah, you're totally right. It's just not for everybody, but the people who go into it, they're hooked, and like you still go to all the Bella Vista dual meets and tournaments, as many as you can, and my parents go with you.
Yeah, thank goodness for them.
No, and Garrett, I think you and I have said this before on here, and we get, I think, speaking for myself at least, I get more out of it than I put into it, and I put a lot into it. And that's part of it, and that little selfish slice of it is, it has given me so much in my career and in my life, and the people I've met and the friends I've met. Like, Garrett and I wouldn't be friends if it weren't for wrestling. You know, we end up getting a degree together and you know, being able to do some really cool things together. And it's just, it attracts special people. It really does, because it's so different and unique. It attracts those special people, and what you get back from that is amazing.
I wouldn't be growing a mullet right now.
Love it.
When you cut that off, save it. I think I could probably glue it right in here.
It's almost like, you know, I promised the guys last year at Masters that if we got 5 boys to state, I should have said 7, but we got 5 boys to state, and I'd grow a mullet, and it's there.
It's getting there. It's getting there.
But I want to say one thing about what you said, Dina, about how good it makes you feel. And you guys, it's the tip of the iceberg. It will only get better as you get older and as you influence more kids and they come back to you and thank you. You just can't realize right now what it's going to be like.
Well, I will say this, probably the best part of my career teaching or coaching is I know the BV tradition from the time when I was there, and to be a part of what it is now, and being lucky enough to connect with Mike and become a part of that, and then to bring Garrett into it, it's been the honor of my career. And that's because that is only there because of you and Charlie. If you weren't there at BV building that program, we wouldn't be working on keeping the tradition alive and doing things the way that we do. So it was the model for us. Absolutely. And
it's so much fun along the way, you know.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's been the joy of my career and the honor of my career to be a part of that. And I'm really proud of what we've been able to do, but it's all modeled on what happened before us. We just took the framework and built upon it.
Yeah, but that's how good things develop.
You know, it's cool too, is right on that note, Dana, is I came in, I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but I started wrestling in kindergarten for the Bella Vista Wrestling Club.
Your mom told me that.
Yeah, in that little wrestling club, Mark Nolan was the coach.
Okay.
And that was like the very end of like the Charlie era.
Okay.
They went and they brought kids to our elementary school and like did a little performance. And my cousins had wrestled, and my brother came home and it was like, hey, I want to wrestle. And then so he went to Bella Vista, and I was watching practice, and I asked my dad, I was like, my dad, we're standing in the same wrestling room as it is now, right? And we're standing in there and asking my dad if I could go wrestle, you know? He's like, okay, go out there. So I went out there and started wrestling, and that was like my first club for my first few years of my wrestling career.
Yeah.
That little wrestling. You know, so, I mean, it does come full circle, you know, and it's awesome. And then here I am now, you know.
And
we're gonna start calling you the boomerang. We keep throwing you out and you keep coming back. As a kid, as a coach, as a teacher.
But you can't leave again. That's the only thing.
Yeah, yes. I know.
But you mentioned, you know, those younger kids, getting them in. The first time we went to the Clovis tournament, and I saw all these little kids march in with matching jackets and sit down in little rows. They were like 3rd graders and 4th graders, and they were in these matching letter jackets. I said, who are those guys? And they were the grade school teams for that area. You know,
they do elementary school leagues down there. Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing what they can do.
Just expose them in some way. Anyway, I mean, I know 1 3rd grade that happened to be exposed every year, but.
So, Ralphene, before I give you to the hardest and last question, I just want to say what a pleasure this has been. Like, the time has flown by. Like, this has been so much fun for me.
It's been so much fun.
I just love you, and I love
the podcast, but just go out for coffee or something.
Yeah. And my kids keep on asking to go back to your library too, so maybe we'll ride our bike.
Good. Oh, that's great. I want to say something here, you guys. Would you put in a plug for Charlie's book? I had some more printed. Dana, if you've got guys or girls too, that are serious, would like a copy, I have more. Garrett, you
absolutely.
Remember, I was going to come back to you, Garrett, for before everything ended and give everybody a book, and that didn't happen. So
right, I remember we talked about that. Yeah.
For anybody who's listening, if you don't have the book called Coach, I'd be glad to send you a copy. So
great read. Yeah. It's a great.
Just read. Zip us Garrett, Coach Lane, or I an email, and we'll get them in contact with you to get a book to them for sure.
Okay.
Because I think our email is probably the easiest way for them to get in touch with us, and then we'll connect them with you.
My email is on bvwrestling.com, garrett.lane@sanjuan.edu. So, but bvwrestling.com. Hey, so Ralphene, Dana and I are huge wing fans, like
I
Buffalo.
knew it. I knew it.
See, this is the one question you should know. It's
The only one.
We are
yeah.
we're big connoisseurs,
Yes.
big fans, and I mentioned this on some other podcast probably, but I'm such a fan that my wife doesn't even let me order them sometimes because I get disappointed. Like if they're not good,
Yeah.
I get sad. You know,
You need to work on that. You really do. You got to have like a meditation beforehand or something.
No.
You really shouldn't
Get you through
cry.
that.
I mean, you cry.
I know.
Yeah.
So best wings you've ever had, or your favorite wings? Go.
I'm going to break your heart. I'm not a wings fan at all. I knew you were going to ask me. I love a good hot dog, but wings, yuck. Good hamburger.
Okay. All right.
So there
Best
you
hot
have it.
dog. Best hot dog.
Yeah. Oh, best hot dog. Well, my hot dog place closed, and you probably don't know it, but Charlie found it, of course. Charlie had a knack for finding the little mom and pop spots clear across the United States. I don't know how he knew them all, but he did. And this little place called the Wienery, not here, the Wiener Works on Madison, not that.
Yeah.
It was down near Sac State. It's called the Wienery, near Elvis or someplace in there. And they had the best hot dogs I've ever eaten. And Charlie and I would go down there, and they had good homemade bean soup. So we would go down there for hot dogs about, every couple months at least. So I went down there a few months ago, and it was closed.
Oh, no.
We had pictures of all the Sacramento icons because everybody knew it. And it just was shut down. So that, I know Parker's has good hot dogs. I don't like the Wiener Works. So you know what? I like Costco hot dogs pretty darn well.
A lot of people do. A lot of people do.
So good. So good.
All right. Ralphene, we cannot thank you enough for coming on and doing this with us. We've been just going crazy talking about this over the last week and getting ready to have you on. And
well, it's been so much fun, Dana, really.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's great. Thank you so much.
Ralphene. We'll have to do part 2, and maybe we'll get your boy on here.
All righty. Sounds good. Thanks again.
Awesome.
I think that's a commitment. She's his agent, so that's a commitment right there. All right, everyone, thank you for listening and being loyal to what we're doing in the podcast, and especially to the Scronco wrestling program itself. Scots and the Broncos are tied together, and this kind of helps us keep that going. So, Coach Lane, you want to sign us off here, bud?
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Ralphene. Thank you, Dana. Go Scroncos.
Go Scroncos.
Do a good season this year.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Do your best.
Do your best. I love it.